Welcome to Manhwa Vortex, your ultimate destination for manhwa recaps and webtoon breakdowns. If you thought one twist was enough, think again, because we've combined the wildest storylines, trending manhwa series, and shocking revenge arcs into one non-stop binge. From overpowered main characters to hidden gems you've never seen before, this is where your next obsession begins. Ready? Let's dive into the madness of Manhwa. Red sky. Smoke choked the air, and the stench of blood was thick enough to turn the stomach. Arrows shrieked overhead, swords clashed like thunder, and sorcery lit the world in blinding flashes. Rifenheart, the Demon King, faced a dozen foes, each one determined to see his end. "All of you, gone," he whispered, his chest tightening with grief. For centuries they had carved a path together, conquering and surviving against gods and demons alike, and now only he remained. "Your reign ends here," Rifenheart the Sword Heart declared, raising a blade crackling with divine aura. The Mage Heart lifted her staff, her incantation already weaving flames into serpents. "Your crimes end today." He looked at the heroes' charged memories, flashing of his fallen ally. They had shared firelit nights, battle strategies, victories, and scars. Once, they had called each other friends. Now they are no more as executioners remain. Rifenheart's grip tightened. If this is justice, then justice is cruel. "I will not fall here," he muttered, raising his hand as arcane energy swirled around him. The enemies hesitated, sensing the storm gathering. Alex, pressing the attack, took a direct hit and was out of the battle along with the other heroes. Only Teslan remained. Rifenheart lifted his hand. Chains of light and shadow burst from the void, whipping toward Teslan with merciless precision. Teslan moved through them like a storm, breaking the bindings with sheer force, advancing without hesitation. His fist shot forward, meeting the Demon King's barrier. The impact split the shield apart, forcing Rifenheart back across the ruined plain. Running out of options, Rifenheart said again, "I will not die here with determination." He pulled out an ancient artifact. With a roar, he unleashed the regression of time and space, a forbidden spell that twisted reality itself. The air shimmered, the battlefield melting away into blinding light. Teslan knew he could not let Rifenheart complete the spell and moved to destroy the artifact with his most powerful attack. The warriors both gave it their all, and a huge surge of energy enveloped them. Birds are seen singing, and when Rifenheart vision returned, he was no longer Rifenheart, but Teslan, a muscular warrior whose fists could crush mountains. At first he did not know that. "What is this?" he wondered. He thought that the spell would not work, even though he was a genius. Furthermore, he questioned his whereabouts and how far back in time he went. Early sun spilled across the clearing, burning away the mists of dawn. Rifenheart stood in front of a mirror, his breath uneven, his thoughts heavier than the earth itself. Slowly he lifted a hand thick, calloused, corded with muscle. With a trembling realization, he noticed a square jaw, weathered skin, eyes sharp and unyielding. Gone were his refined features, the grace, the beauty, the powerful presence of the Demon King. What stared back was raw, brutal strength carved into flesh. "No!" his voice cracked. "This face, I know this face." The memory struck him like a blade. He remembered stories whispered even in the demon lands of the martial king Teslan, a human whose fists rivaled the weapons of gods. The irony carved a bitter smile across Rifenheart's lips. "I, the Demon King, reborn into the body of the one man who once stood as humanity's shield." His laughter died into silence, broken only by a sudden crash. The door slammed open. "Teslan, enough brooding!" a thunderous voice roared. Rifenheart turned. The man before him was old, yet his frame was still thick with hardened muscle. His gaze carried the weight of mountains. Garad, Teslan's master, wasted no time with pleasantries. He seized Teslan by the arm and dragged him into the training yard. "Your body is soft, your spirit dull. Today we forge it back into steel." The training began. Rifenheart's body, Teslan's body, was driven past its limits. "This is absurd," he coughed, collapsing. "This isn't training, "This is slaughter," Garad only sneered. He bound Teslan's arms to a tree trunk. Without hesitation, he struck Teslan's stomach with a thick wooden staff. The impact was thunder. Pain erupted through his ribs. Blood filled his mouth. "Again!" Garad barked, striking once more. Rifenheart screamed. The agony was unbearable. But beneath the torment, something stirred. His body did not shatter. Each strike burned, but it did not break. Hours passed. The sun climbed, then fell. At last, when his flesh was blackened with bruises and his body shook with exhaustion, Garad released him. "You survived," the old master said simply. "You'll live to fight tomorrow." Dragging his battered frame, Rifenheart followed Garad into the bathhouse. The water shimmered faintly with herbs and minerals. Lowering himself in, he hissed as the warmth seeped into his wounds. Pain dulled, tension melted. Slowly, impossibly, his body began to mend. Floating in the steam, his thoughts darkened. If I am in Teslan's body, then who inhabits mine? He clenched his fists, the ripples distorting his reflection. Images of his old self, the demon king, proud and unstoppable, rose unbidden. Then came the realization. "Teslan," he whispered, dread coiling in his gut. "If I wear his flesh, then he must wear mine." The thought gnawed at him. What destruction could the martial king unleash with the power of the demon king at his command? Rifenheart's gaze hardened. The bath's warmth could not wash away the chill of that fear. The morning sun glinted off a towering pile of meat, grotesque in its enormity. Rifenheart stared at it, stomach churning, as Garad barked instructions. "You eat, you grow, you recover. This is how a true fighter thrives," the old master said, eyes sharp as mountain steel. Rifenheart grimaced but obeyed, chewing mechanically. Every bite was heavy, each swallow a reminder that his new body demanded more than his old mind had ever prepared for. The days were spent on the mountains. Weighted bags on his back, he climbed steep cliffs, hands raw and blistered. Push-ups performed on just a single finger, sit-ups dangling from thick branches, muscles screaming in protest. Each day ended with him collapsing, drenched in sweat, tasting iron in his mouth, and wondering how much longer this hell would last. Nights offered no respite. Lying on the thin mattress, he traced the scratches he had made on his wall. Each mark a count of days, weeks, the slow march of time in this relentless crucible. 10 years, he thought, recalling his previous life. Only after 10 years from I would a serious mage to reach my potential. Now he was trapped, forced to master a body that belonged to another, while wondering what Teslan could be doing with his original body, training, building strength, and closing in on him even now. Desperation drove him to action. One morning, he slipped behind a tree and bolted, heart pounding with hope. But at the edge of the forest clearing, waiting like a shadow, was Garad. "You think a story about a runaway boy will convince me?" The master chuckled. "I must admit, your tale of being from the future is the most creative yet. Almost believable." Escape became an obsession. Days melted into weeks of sneaking, swimming through rivers, hiding behind boulders, each attempt failing as Garad's senses and mastery always outmatched him. Even in failure, the training continued, brutal, merciless, and unending. Then one dawn, Rifenheart felt it, a surge deep in his core. His chest tightened, breath caught. Light shimmered faintly around him. His aura, the martial energy of the body he now inhabited, had awakened. Shock and awe competed in his chest. Garad's eyes gleamed with pride. "Finally, you've begun to truly awaken. Good, very good." The days after that were a whirlwind of sparring and practice. Garad pushed him further, teaching him to harness his aura with precision. One day under the high sun, Rifenheart learned a move he would later recognize as Calamity Horn. Fists glowing with stacked aura, each strike amplified like a hammer smashing the earth. Teslan's signature technique revealed its power. "This is extraordinary," he muttered, realizing not only the sheer force, but also the cunning behind it. The combination of raw power and strategic layering. Curiosity overtook him. Could his new body still wield magic? He focused, gathering what energy he could, and cast a simple arrow bullet toward a tree near the waterfall. The projectile fizzled weakly against the bark. Disappointment sank in. Magic did not flow easily here. His body, trained for fists and fury, was not attuned to spells. Frustration burned, distracting him from his surroundings. A low, commanding voice cut through the sound of rushing water. "Act as if you did not see me," it said. Rifenheart's head snapped up. A massive figure emerged from the shadows, an orc, stern, eyes sharp as obsidian. Survival instincts flared in his chest. The world around him seemed to pause, the roar of the waterfall fading, leaving only the silence between predator and prey. The youth wrinkled his nose and guessed that the orc before him was about 3 or 4 years old. The young monster looked at him intently, as if hiding from someone. Rifenheart smiled and asked if someone was chasing him. The orc flinched in surprise, realizing the man could speak his language. Closing his eyes, he admitted that he was indeed being hunted. Hands on his waist, Rifenheart declared that he wanted to help. The orc hesitated, warning that such help could put him in danger. But Rifenheart only smiled, noting the noble air of this creature, and assured him he was strong enough. Purple smoke rose as he lifted his hands, cloaking the area in magic. Pointing toward the entrance of the cave, Rifenheart told the orc his spell would hide him. The monster stared in shock. "You're a mage?" he asked, surprised at the sight of such power in someone with such a warrior's body. Confused but unconcerned, Rifenheart simply shrugged. The orc stepped into the cave and turned back to thank him. But before Rifenheart could relax, the sound of footsteps echoed behind him. A crowd of men approached, led by a knight. "Have you seen the monster?" the knight demanded. Another warrior stepped forward, promising a gold coin in exchange for information. The knight smirked at his companion. "Don't bother, I wouldn't actually pay him anyway." Crossing his arms, Rifenheart coolly replied that he hadn't seen anyone. But the knight noticed tracks on the ground, realizing the orc had gone ahead. "This is my home," Rifenheart declared firmly, standing before the stone wall behind him, "and I won't let anyone inside." The mercenaries mocked him, but their laughter quickly faded when Rifenheart raised his hand. A massive purple seal appeared, and a weapon materialized in the earth before him. He grasped its hilt with a sly grin. "Don't worry," he said. "You won't die from this." The mercenaries panicked as Rifenheart swung the weapon with overwhelming force. Their leader shouted for everyone to attack at once. Steel clashed, but Rifenheart's body barely flinched, even when struck from behind. The enemy's sword bent against him. With a powerful swing, Rifenheart threw his attacker aside, smirking at how little the blades could harm him. Soon, most of the mercenaries were on the ground, groaning in pain and begging for mercy. Only one man remained standing. He staggered forward and demanded Rifenheart's name. With a grin, Rifenheart struck him down. "It's not fair for you to be standing when your friends are already praying to the ancestors." Terrified, the mercenaries fled. Rifenheart glanced at his broken weapon and thought aloud that perhaps he needed students of his own, just so he'd have someone to spar with. The orc emerged from the cave, bowing deeply. He pressed a hand to his chest and promised never to forget this kindness. With solemn words, he declared Rifenheart his life mentor, a role sacred in orc culture. Amused, Rifenheart almost gave his true name, Teslon, but stopped himself. Instead, he smiled and said, "My name is Rifenheart." The orc, hair flowing in the wind, promised to remember the name. When asked where he would go, the orc said he wished to find a safe place, or perhaps become a free wanderer. Rifenheart advised him to seek the land of trials, where the Blue Bear tribe resided. As the young orc ran off, Rifenheart called after him, asking his name. The boy turned and shouted, "Todd!" Rifenheart froze in shock, his mouth falling open. The image of Tahid, the future leader of the Blue Bear tribe and eventually all orcs, flashed in his mind. Scratching his temple with a smile, Rifenheart thought it must be fate. After all, the real Teslon would never have helped an orc. Watching Todd disappear into the distance, Rifenheart recalled a vision, different races standing together under the Antares Empire. He pictured Tahid, Sirius the Troll, King Terry the Dwarf, and countless others by his side. Half a year passed since that fateful encounter. On a frozen lake, Gerard, his fiery fist blazing, unleashed a torrent of energy. Rifenheart was forced to leap back and defend himself with his vortex guard. Impressive, Gerard said, crossing his arms. He remembered how his student had once lost his memory, calling himself by another name. Hands on his waist, Rifenheart retorted, "Why bring up something from 6 years ago?" Gerard scratched his beard. "Because in the last 10 years, you've grown stronger than ever. Yet, why are you still so small?" Rifenheart blinked. "Small? I'm nearly 2 meters tall." "Too short," Gerard roared. "A member of the indestructible training hall must be taller than 2 meters. Placing a hand on his student's head, Gerard asked if he was following the breathing technique correctly. Rifenheart wondered privately if true growth would make him so tall he'd never fit through a doorway, but Gerard nodded with satisfaction. "No matter. You're strong enough now. It's time to show me everything you've learned." Excitement lit Rifenheart's eyes. He soared into the sky, summoning the Horn of Distress. Energy exploded as he struck the frozen lake, shattering the ice into towering shards. Gerard laughed heartily. "Excellent attack. You've reached the 4th stage." Rifenheart looked at his hand, a confident smile spreading across his face. Gerard's expression grew serious. "It's time for you to leave. Whether you become a hero or a villain doesn't matter. Live freely." Rifenheart frowned sadly, recalling his teacher's words from long ago. Even villains, Gerard had said, must live honorably. Defend those who suffer unfairly. Spread the teachings of the indestructible training hall. Find a worthy student to inherit our ways. Gerard tossed him a bag of silver, payment for his training. He also handed over a scroll, a gift hidden in the Settlered Mountains. As Rifenheart set out into the snowy wilderness, he paused, uncertain if this freedom was truly his. Behind him, a massive explosion shook the ground. Gerard's voice roared across the mountains. "Go forth! You are the heir to the greatest techniques in this land." With a grin, Rifenheart ran on, toward destiny. A small house in the city. An old man nervously tells his boss that this is far too risky, but the elder shakes his head. If no one else is going to speak up, then he will. A knight steps forward, asking what the old man wants. Calmly, the elder replies, "They need to be paid for the food and for the lodging." The knight laughs, tossing a gold coin onto the table. "These fools don't know the first thing about honor. That should be more than enough." The old man glances at it. The knight smirks, certain this elder has never even seen such a coin before. But the elder shakes his head. "That's far from enough." The knight glares. "Do you take me for a fool? Do you think I don't know market prices?" Then with a swing, he strikes the old man in the face. "You've got nerve trying to cheat a knight." The elder steadies himself. Inwardly, he thinks, "These men are nothing more than common bandits. They take our house, our food, and then insult us with a single coin in return." Suddenly, someone asks, "Edward, what's wrong?" The old man turns. "It's nothing, Stefan." But the knight laughs cruelly. "This place is full of miserable folk. That's why you can't show mercy to commoners. They don't know their place, and they never know when to stop." We cut to the peaceful life Reinhardt once lived. Alongside an elf, he had been skinny, bony, almost frail. She once told him he was graceful, like a finely crafted blade. Now, staring into the mirror, he wonders what kind of cursed golem he has become. At least he's taller now. That part is a blessing. Cyrus, at this point, must be around 7 years old. In human years, that's closer to 17, but elves live far longer. This is the city of Krone, in the southern region of Vasily. She is supposed to be sold next year, and right now she is likely in the slave house of Chen. Reinhardt wonders if the first thing he should do is storm the auction and snatch her back. But no, that would interfere too much with the flow of fate. It would be wiser to simply earn the money and avoid drawing attention. The problem is, an elven slave costs a fortune, and right now he has less than 30 silver coins, most of it already spent on lodging. But none of that truly matters. He has the skills, the techniques, and, most importantly, the memories of the future. And he knows of a certain ruin nearby. Meanwhile, Stefan asks Todd if he's found the relics. Todd, a mage skilled in exploration and tracking, replies that it will only take a moment. From the window, Stefan presses him. Are you certain of the location? Todd smirks. Trust me, it's the same place the legendary swordsman Claude von Leata once explored. 3 days have passed since Reinhardt left Krone. This body of his is remarkable. He can walk for hours without hunger, without cold. His stamina seems endless. On top of that, he still has the skill from his past life. Artificial phantasmagoria, a perfect memory. He can recall every detail as though it happened yesterday. And in that past life, he once met a mage named Todd, who mentioned the ruins of House Alton. Using that memory, he and Cyrus found treasures overlooked by Todd's team. Treasures worth over 2,000 gold coins. So yes, that is the place he must go. From atop the mountain, he spots the village of cattle. It looks exactly as he remembers. Down in the village, an old man asks what they should do. The Valley of Death is a place no one should ever approach. Another elder argues, those nobles begged us for a guide. If we refuse, there will be consequences. One man curses the nobles, saying their boss was injured searching for this place. Another loses his temper, shouting, disgusting nobles. In the middle of it all, a villager pulls out a bow. I'll go. I'm the best climber here. His wife and daughter burst into tears. Deep inside, he begs silently, someone save me. I don't want to do this. But the other men clap him on the back, praising his courage. And then suddenly, Reinhardt's face appears at the window. I'll go. The man spins around, bow drawn. Who are you? I'm just a traveler, Reinhardt says calmly. I overheard your conversation. They ask if he knows the valley. He nods. They tell him it's impossible. No sane man would volunteer for that cursed place. But Reinhardt replies, I've already been there once. I'll be fine. Inside, he thinks to himself, these villagers are lucky. I just saved one of their lives. The Valley of Death, as they call it, is no ordinary place. It is a dungeon, a remnant of the Silver Era. 50 years ago, a knight awakened his aura at the age of 45, considered young back then, but fame blinded him. He entered the valley alone and perished. With him, the legendary blade known as the demonic sword of Alton was lost. Since then, the tale has been passed down like myth, and now out of nowhere, Reinhardt is heading there with Stefan's crew. The Alpha Rose watches Reinhardt riding and sighs. He looks so elegant on horseback. Reinhardt gives a polite nod, hiding his thoughts. They're having the time of their lives while dragging others along. Among them is a redhead named Scylla. Beautiful, young, but Reinhardt wonders if she can truly wield high-level healing spells. He can hardly believe Scylla is a man. It unsettles him. Still, his main focus is Todd. In his past life, Reinhardt was a prodigy mage, and Todd had been a figure of admiration. But now he notices strange tension between Todd and Scylla. Surely Todd isn't attracted? He shakes his head. No, Todd was never like that. Suddenly, Todd approaches. You made a wise decision agreeing to be our guide. Everyone else was too afraid. Reinhardt replies, it's only natural they would be afraid. Edward interrupts boastfully. Nonsense. Fear makes no sense, not when traveling with the bravest knights of the kingdom. Reinhardt resists the urge to break the man's arrogance. Then a strange noise trembles through the forest. Trees shake, and from above, harpies descend. An ambush. The group shouts for formation, blades clash, and claws dive. Relch roars that such beasts dare to attack a blessed man like Stefan. Todd summons chains of fire, burning a harpy mid-flight. Scylla casts healing and buffs across the team. Reinhardt stands back watching. Not bad, he admits. Their swordplay is better than expected, but still crude compared to true masters. No wonder Gerard was always proud of his teachings. But of course, there is a flaw. One harpy breaks formation, diving for the orcs carrying supplies, only to be obliterated by a single punch from Reinhardt. As Todd recalls, this is where most groups lost their men. But Stefan is of the Alton family. He will not allow defeat. Still, some soldiers are torn apart. Reinhardt notices. Stefan isn't cruel, but he does not fight to protect those beside him. And perhaps that, in itself, is what makes a poor leader. Scylla calls out, urging everyone to take cover in the trees. At least Reinhardt thinks someone here has sense. Another wave of harpies descends. Reinhardt doesn't even dodge. He lets them strike. One claw slashes across his eye, but he does not falter. Stefan calls for a damage report. Priests and mages are unharmed, and that's when Reinhardt realizes they do not care about him or the orcs. Stefan raises his arm. We've proven our strength. Rest now, after such a glorious victory. Reinhardt seizes the chance to approach Todd. Your fire magic saved us all. I heard you were from the Delphia Magic Tower. I have a friend there as well. Todd asks, who? His name is Reinhardt. Do you know him? Todd blinks. Yes, I know him. I didn't expect someone like you to be his friend. That kid was kind-hearted, gentle. Nothing like you. Reinhardt feels his stomach twist. Todd's words are unsettling. When Todd starts describing him, his soft skin, gemstone eyes, delicate frame, Reinhardt knows instantly. This man is not admiring, he is lusting. Thankfully, Scylla approaches, asking if he's hurt. Reinhardt waves her off, telling her to check on the orcs instead. But one soldier scoffs. Why waste healing on monsters? They recover on their own. Reinhardt notes grimly, the orcs are treated worse than dogs, Stefan calls. Guide, let's move. Reinhardt forces a smile and continues to lead. Hours pass. The soldiers look exhausted. They've fought wolves, ogres, and swarms of monsters. Why is this mountain so dangerous, they ask. Because Reinhardt is guiding them in a straight line, cutting through danger instead of avoiding it. Efficiency over safety. That is a mage's way. Stefan slumps. Now I understand why Sir Claude died here. Then his expression changes. Before them, the dungeon entrance. In front of him, in the gorge, stood a giant obelisk. Stan smiled widely and asked if this was it. Rifenheart confirmed it. A heavy fog rolled across the ancient ruins of Palton. The squad made their way to the entrance of the dungeon. They stopped in front of a massive gate. Todd waved his hand and announced that this was the entrance. Their leader decided they could go inside. Rifenheart opened his mouth in protest, furious, and ordered everyone to prepare. But then he placed his hands together calmly, saying that he would wait outside. He could not make it back to the village alone. The commander assured him that they would protect him on the way back. Since his task was done, he had led them here. Rifenheart smiled faintly, wondering if the captain truly believed that. The soldiers raised their swords as their leader declared that a great man was buried here, and that they must find the demonic sword at all costs. The knight shouted, ordering his men forward. Rifenheart wished them luck. One by one, the soldiers disappeared into the dungeon. Left alone, Rifenheart smirked and decided to mind his own business. For now. The walls of the obelisk were covered in ivy, remnants of the Silver Era. Palton had once been a strategic point, a standard military installation. The technology of that time was now considered priceless. As Rifenheart stepped inside, he remembered how he had once explored this place with Cyrus. A girl pressed against the wall, whispering that there was a hidden passage. Suddenly, the wall shifted apart, revealing a secret chamber. Rifenheart blushed, questioning why such mysteries were found in such a dangerous place. Placing his hand against the stone, he realized the key was in balancing the seals of water and earth, in reverse order. He remembered the cheat sheet hidden in his sleeve. Closing his eyes, he cursed the weakness of this body, wondering why it lacked proper mana. The doors groaned and opened before him. He shrugged off his jacket at the entrance, stretching his shoulders. It was time to test the true limits of his physical strength. Then, a scream echoed through the halls. Rifenheart froze. The squad had gone the opposite way. So why? Were the screams coming from here? Stopping before a stairway, he noticed a secret passage linking the third floor to the basement. It was dangerous. Opening it could trigger a disaster. His eyes narrowed. This had once been a military facility. He frowned grimly, realizing that any use of mana could set off ancient traps meant to ward off intruders. Somewhere in the distance, people cried out as the ground gave way beneath them. The squad had likely fallen into a trap. Sweat gathered at Rifenheart's brow. Suddenly, a blade slashed across a soldier's throat. "Comrade!" Stefan shouted in horror. Ahead lay a long, dark corridor. From its shadows emerged a massive scythe. Burning eyes pierced the darkness. Rifenheart's brows knitted sternly. That was no ordinary foe. A giant demon stepped into view. The commander's voice trembled. Could any human even hope to defeat such a monster? Sin dropped to his knees beside a fallen comrade, calling on felons to bless the wounded with her healing light. The soldier smiled faintly, whispering his thanks. The healer's heart tightened. He would survive, only because of his companions. Todd explained that they had avoided further injury from the fall, but greater dangers lay ahead. The squad entered a vast hall. From the shadows, a thunderous blow struck. Another massive demon emerged. The heroes broke into a desperate run. The priest raised his staff, summoning a wave of holy light, calling upon the gods to crush this vile creature. A divine image flared above his head. The boy prayed for unwavering courage. Scylla glared with fury, outraged at the hesitation of the warriors of Alan. The light swirled stronger, surging through the soldiers. The knights roared with courage, charging into battle. The magician gasped. His friend had poured so much holy power into them that they had become berserkers. Steel clashed. Undead and soldiers collided with merciless force. The magician traced a circle into the air, summoning countless blades above his head. Laus leapt into the air, seizing one of the spectral swords. She struck, severing the demon's hand in a single slash. Blood spattered across her armor. The monster's fist crashed into her chest. She fell to one knee, clutching her wound. The elf pressed her palm to it, asking through gritted teeth if she had been of any use. Stan swung his blade, praising her efforts. The commander slashed across the demon's body, shaking blood from his weapon. He snarled at the enemy, calling them worthless creatures. Their captain shouted, rallying his warriors. Then, without warning, a fiery explosion rocked the chamber. The ceiling collapsed as a blazing monster appeared, roaring, its molten claws tearing through soldiers with ease. The knight commanded his men to fight to the very end, to protect the honor of their families. The soldiers charged, but were scattered as the demon's fist shattered the ground. Stefan shielded his face. He could not die here. Not like this. Another knight raised his sword. Shame would not be his end. The commander surged forward, declaring himself the sole heir of the mighty Alpian family, the unshakable. His sword pierced the demon's shoulder. The beast roared, slamming him across the chamber. His body hit the stone floor with brutal force. Eyes wide, his comrades faltered. Sin clenched his hands, summoning another beam of divine light to crush the creature. The staff struck the demon's head, but it only enraged the beast further. It lunged toward him. The priest froze. The monster was upon him, but at that moment, a figure intervened. The demon was hurled aside. The priest blinked in shock. Before him stood Rifenheart. He lowered into a fighting stance, waves of raw energy radiating from his body, his brows furrowed in focus. With a single devastating strike, the demon collapsed, lifeless. The young man straightened, wondering aloud. Had one blow truly been enough? His own eyes widened in awe. No wonder he had nearly died from a single strike by Teslin. Rifenheart glanced around. Fallen soldiers lay everywhere. He decided they had to be carried to safety. More undead descended the stairs. The wizards gasped. Who was this man to wield such impossible strength? Rifenheart lifted Laus into his arms, carving a path through the tide of the dead. Stefan held his head in despair. Are you all right? Rifenheart asked calmly. Corpses of monsters littered the steps. The soldiers stared in stunned silence. The commander pointed at him, demanding to know if this truly was the martial artist. The captain studied him closely, admitting he had never seen such strength. He asked his name. Arms crossed, Rifenheart thought carefully. He could not reveal his true identity. He gave a false name. The knight frowned. He had never heard of such a man. Where are you from? Stefan pressed. Rifenheart looked away. I don't know. The knight scowled. Was he just a common rogue? Not even an aristocrat? Placing a hand on Rifenheart's shoulder, the commander remarked that he must have only finished off the enemies they had already weakened. Still, he thanked him for his aid. Rifenheart waved him off, snapping that they were of little use. The captain glared, demanding to know his respect for the Altan family. "Calm yourself," another soldier intervened, but still their commander sneered, calling Rifenheart a man without manners. Who had taught him? Looking aside, Rifenheart replied simply, he had gathered wisdom from everywhere. He dared not mention Gerard's name, known across the world. Stefan narrowed his eyes. "Where did you gain such skills?" Rifenheart scratched his ear casually. "Shouldn't we be more worried about the wounded?" The nobleman raised his brows at the bluntness of his tone. Rifenheart pointed at the injured. "They need help." Another noble scoffed, remarking that their guide didn't even realize how arrogant he sounded. But Rifenheart only continued scratching his ear. One of the soldiers murmured that this manner of speech belonged to someone used to commanding others. Could he be from royalty? Rifenheart looked away, saying nothing. And in that silence, they began to grasp the truth of his arrogance. Just like Sillin approached his comrade and asked how tall he was. His eyes lit up when the warrior replied that he was 190 centimeters tall. The saint pressed his hand and asked how he trained to achieve such a body. The fighter said that he had suffered beatings, eaten a lot, and carried heavy things. The boy clasped his hands and remembered that martial artists never revealed their training methods. Rifenheart imagined the priest looking at the other boys and assumed that he wanted to partake of what he could not receive because of his cute appearance and weak body. The healer's eyes widened. Reality did not live up to his expectations because even diligent training did not help him grow and mature. He only managed to build up divine strength. Rifenheart covered his chest with his hands when he realized why his comrade was devouring him with his gaze. The boy turned away and decided to go in search of a way out. Sillin said that he would go with him. The boy frowned and asked what would happen if someone got hurt, and he wasn't there. Putting his hand on his belt, Stefan said he would go with him and asked the elf to stay here and help the wounded. The boy approached the guide and asked if he would mind. The warrior replied that he didn't care. The heroes walked down the corridor. Looking at the fighter, the commander decided that he couldn't help but acknowledge the fact that this commoner had helped him, even if it was an accident, and was still outraged by his arrogant tone. The captain smirked, thinking about demonstrating his strength and putting him in his place when the demon showed up. Suddenly, someone hit him in the neck. His body fell to the ground. The martial artist wished him sweet dreams. Several monsters came out from behind him. The undead opened their mouths wide. Rifenheart immediately crushed their skulls with his fists. Rifenheart lowered his hands and decided it was time to look at the treasures, now that all the distractions were gone. The door opened in front of him. He raised his hands and noticed that there were many different items from the Silver Age stored here. The bottomless bag glowed. This magical artifact allowed him to carry 10 times more items. The young man took a necklace out of the bag and was glad that there were so many valuable things here. Stefan put his hand to his head and asked what happened. The warrior approached him and explained that he had been hit right in the back of the head, causing him to faint. Frowning, the boy wondered why today was such a terrible day and thanked him for his help. Smiling slyly, the fighter said that he did not need thanks and thought about the fact that he had knocked him out himself. The commander fainted again from the beating. The martial artist hoped that he had not hit him too hard and decided not to pay attention to it, because aristocrats were already living their best life. The captain squinted angrily, surprised that he could not notice anything, and wondered if it was all about him. Rifenheart realized that he would have to come back for the remaining loot another time. Ivy grew under the ceiling. The guys decided to return to the squad. The soldiers walked forward along the corridor. Sillin approached his comrade and asked if he was a prince, if he had such outstanding abilities. Rifenheart asked if ordinary people were so rarely outstanding. Looking at him, the saint explained that he was too naturally able to speak condescendingly and was surprised that his comrade allowed himself to talk like that, even to Edward, who was already over 40 years old. The boy narrowed his eyes and remembered that he was only 22 years old now and said that he had forgotten his manners because he rarely met people on his way. The hero stopped in front of a tall door. Stefan went inside. The boy's eyes widened in surprise. The monster opened its mouth and exhaled smoke. The giant demon stuck out its tongue and let out a battle cry. The boy grabbed the sword and decided that this place should have its own guardian. The young man remembered that he had not met him before. The warrior narrowed his eyes and assumed that no one had taken care of him yet. Looking at the monster, the fighter suggested going back because they would not be able to cope with it. The soldier opened his mouth wide and called the leader to look out what this creature was holding in its hands. The monster was clutching the hilt of the demonic sword Alpion. Edward asked if his comrade was really going to fight him. The commander took out his weapon and asked if it was not obvious. The demon raised its head and opened its mouth. The man shouted that it was too dangerous and suggested returning to the estate to prepare for battle properly. The captain was outraged that Claude's sword was desecrated. Gritting his teeth, the knight realized that he had no right to retreat now and decided to take it from the enemy with a sword at all costs. Stephen raised his sword and called his comrades to arms. The martial artist pursed his lips in displeasure and called him a fool. The monster raised his hand. Inside the spatial rift, there was a system for automatically correcting flaws. When the system failed, protection was triggered that absorbed supernatural monsters. The demon opened his mouth and screamed loudly. The entities that guarded the dungeon were summoned by the system as guards. Rifenheart frowned and thought that this was the same monster that defeated Claude and increased its level thanks to this. The boy turned and shouted that their enemy was chained and asked if his comrades were afraid of a tied-up enemy. Rifenheart narrowed his eyes and asked if they really intended to fight the creature, and said they had no chance of winning. Edward smiled and called him a barbarian who knew nothing of a knight's honor, and explained that there were things in this world worth risking one's life for. The soldiers charged. The man urged them to show what they could do. The boy wondered how they were going to kill this monster. Scylla clasped his hands and blessed his comrades. The knights dealt the demon a mighty blow and wished him death. The monster immediately threw them away with one of its clawed paws. The boy frowned in displeasure and said he had warned them that it wouldn't work. The warrior dodged the soldier flying at him. The monster continued to throw the opponents in different directions. The fighter wondered if they really liked it. Stephen swung his sword furiously. The martial artist mentally called him a fool and was surprised that Edward was still trying to help him. The boy lunged forward and jumped. He managed to strike the enemy. The saint put his fingers together and asked Philonax to turn his holy staff on this evil entity. Bright energy fell on the demon. The skeleton opened his mouth wide. The priest asked him to release his holy staff. A powerful explosion of holy energy was heard in front of the monster. Lelsia jumped into the air above his head. The knights attacked the enemy at once. Crossing his arms over his chest, Rifenheart called the elf quite talented and thought about singling her out as number 2 in this squad. Todd raised his hands and cast the spell. A huge whirlwind appeared in front of him. Streams of mana flowed along the walls of the dungeon. Suddenly they caught fire. The chains were covered in flames. The monster broke free from its bonds. Rifenheart gritted his teeth and realized that things were bad for them. The monster lunged forward. Its powerful host crushed several soldiers. The frantic demon pounced on the knights. The commander raised his sword above his head and wished him death. The monster punched him in the stomach. Blood gushed from the captain's mouth. The man opened his mouth in fear and called out to him. Stephen clutched his chest. The nobleman was glad that he was okay. Elsia ran forward. The girl jumped up and did a somersault in the air. She dealt several consecutive blows to the enemy. The woman swung her sword, her face tense. Flames ignited in the monster's mouth. A wave of fire rushed forward. The soldiers immediately jumped back in different directions. They had to fall to the ground to dodge. Scylla spread his arms as the explosion occurred right next to him. The boy opened his mouth in fear. His pupils narrowed. The boy covered it with his body at the last moment. The wave of fire split in two and passed them by. The young man clenched his fist and apologized for not being able to react in time. The demon squatted in front of him. The warrior frowned and decided that he could handle it. Energy flared up around him. He himself wondered what the limit of his current strength was and whether martial arts could help in the fight against such creatures. The fighter clenched his fist and decided that the times when he was a magician were already gone. Confidently knitting his eyebrows, the martial artist felt goosebumps all over his body from the sight of such a strong opponent, and declared that he had come a long way to become so strong. Rifenheart dealt his opponent 2 powerful blows. Rifenheart leaned back to avoid the blow. The boy frowned and was surprised that this body could easily dodge a normal sword, but the demon was still able to scratch him. The boy found himself behind the enemy. The monster's tail left several cuts on his arm. The monster kicked him with its hoof. The saint's mouth opened in horror when the warrior crashed into the wall. The fighter scratched the back of his head and said that he was fine. The healer's eyes widened in surprise and wondered if this was the power of the aura. After stretching his neck, the martial artist realized that he would have had a chance to counterattack if he had withstood the blow, and decided to use the opportunity to polish his technique. The demon opened its mouth wide and roared. They entered into close combat. Stephen's mouth opened in amazement. Watching the battle from the sidelines, the commander wondered how a lowly commoner could wield the aura when even he could not awaken it. The captain clenched his teeth and asked how this was even possible. The monster bared its teeth in rage. The knight frowned in fear and wondered what kind of person this was. Rifenheart swung his fist and dealt a powerful blow. He barely dodged the enemy's attack. The guy grinned, feeling what incredible strength he had managed to develop over all this time. With one blow, the young man tore off the monster's arm. The demon's eyes lit up. The guardians of the ruins did not fall even after serious injuries, because the dungeon endlessly pumped mana into them. Waves of energy ran through the body of the beast. The monster opened its mouth and spewed flames. The warrior lunged forward to dodge. The martial artist grabbed the enemy by the arm to practice the hold. Rifenheart kicked the monster in the face. He grinned and dealt a series of blows. Rifenheart, his eyes burning, beat the enemy. The soldiers watched their fight from the side. Squinting, the boy realized that he had gotten carried away and thought about using the Horn of Disaster to finish it all off in one go. The demon swung its hoof. The boy realized that he couldn't use his skill because otherwise the whole place would collapse. The warrior gritted his teeth when Todd asked him to use his sword and cover it with aura. The fighter turned around and shouted that he didn't know how to do it. The man asked what that meant. The martial artist frowned and said that he could only cover the body with aura because that was the teaching of their clan. Sillin opened his mouth wide and called out to him. Holding back the paws of the monster, Rifenheart turned around. The boy remembered that his body had high durability. Rifenheart gritted his teeth and confirmed it. The saint put his fingers together and decided to cast a binding. The boy opened his eyes wide as the blessing of Philonance fell on his body. The boy clenched his teeth with intention. He managed to throw the monster over himself. The warrior released its paws and threw it aside. The fighter grabbed his hand and realized that his comrade had used a divine spell, not on an object, but on a human body. The healer closed his eyes and asked his friend to beat this monster to death. The martial artist ran forward to quickly finish this. He kicked the monster in the jaw. Then Rifenheart hit it with his knees. Rifenheart swung his fist furiously. During the attack, a huge amount of energy burst out of him. The demon's body flew into the air. An explosion of aura was heard. One blow tore the monster into pieces. The wizard blushed when he saw his friend, who had just won. Mana flowed under the ceiling. Suddenly, her chain went out. Sillin opened his mouth in surprise and asked if that was all. Rifenheart asked him to quickly remove the spell. Stefan then approached him, gritting his teeth. The boy claimed that their guide was doing a good job of hiding his identity and asked if they were really that insignificant to him. The commander looked at him from under his brows and said that he would never forgive him for trampling on his honor, and suggested that he was enjoying watching their fight from the sidelines. The boy narrowed his eyes and denied this, thinking that it meant he cared about what was happening. But that was not the case. The warrior turned away silently, and the captain asked how he dared to turn his back on him. The knight wanted to attack him, but the fighter ducked and raised the demonic sword. Stefan suddenly tripped and was unable to stay on his feet. The boy rolled down the rubble of the dungeon. The commander gritted his teeth and decided that the guide had dodged on purpose. Raising the sword, the martial artist said that he was not trying to mock him and asked him to take what they came for. The captain grabbed the demonic sword. Edward was surprised that this man was so careless with such a precious thing and said that such were the privileges of the truly strong. Rifenheart raised his eyebrows and thought that this weapon was second class compared to the one he usually used. The captain frowned furiously. Rifenheart suggested returning to the village because there was nothing else to see here. And that's just a taste of the chaos and hype the best Manhwa and Korean webtoons bring. If your heart's racing and your mind's blown, then you're officially part of the Vortex. Don't forget to like, comment your favorite manhwa, and hit subscribe so you never miss a recap, breakdown, or webtoon recommendation. More epic plots, S-tier stories, and jaw-dropping twists are waiting for you. Until next time, keep binging, keep vibing, and stay lost in the Manhwa Vortex.